Sometimes when we come to mission in Britain, it's so easy to focus upon chaplains in the forces, in hospitals, in educational establishments, in prisons. It's easy to focus upon others who do mission work. But the truth is, mission in Britain is also about you and I. We're all involved in mission in Britain. Yes, we are encouraged to give financially, and there are envelopes on your seat should you wish to make a financial donation today to the work of the Methodist Church in its mission in Britain. But all of us are involved in mission. On my phone, I have a number of pictures and photographs that I've collected over the years, many of them quite amusing, such as the sign on the RSPCA shop in Bury in Lancashire, RSPCA helping bury animals. Or there is another one which is come and help bury Santa, or something like that. However, I do have a few that are a little bit more serious. And this is one of them. And it says, Jesus did not give a mission to his church. He formed a church for his mission. Without the mission, a church is not a church, it's just a group of disobedient Christians hanging out. A powerful message. Without the mission, a church is not a church, it's just a group of disobedient Christians hanging out. And we are formed to fulfill the mission of Jesus, not to find our own mission. I don't know which version it was that Joy read from. Is it the Good News version today, or?
Yes.
Good, yes. The Good News version had it one way. The version I have in front of me phrases it this way. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. I love that phrase. It will be given to you a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. That overflowing experience. Someone I was in college with, still in contact with years later, there was an occasion when Anita and I were visiting David and his family. And you know, in years gone by, if it was posh coffee, you had a sort of a coffee filter system. And you put some water in and it gurgled up and came down through a coffee and through some filter paper into a jug. David realised there wasn't going to be enough water there for everybody. So he topped up the reservoir. And we had coffee, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. Put into our laps, not quite into the laps. God is generous. God is loving. God encourages us to be as he is. There are some things over the years which I've heard that have stuck with me. When I started circuit ministry back in 1990, in the Eastern Valley of South Wales, a valley that stretched from Blaenavon in the north down through Pontypool in the south, a mining valley where the mining had stopped. In that short distance, there were something like 42 churches and chapels, most of which were struggling. But there was, in that circuit, the Methodist circuit at the time, those 42 churches and chapels weren't all Methodist, don't worry about that. There were some others around as well. But in the Methodist congregations, there was a local preacher called Ted Morton. He was from Blaenavon, he was from mining stock, and he preached without notes. He would have been nearer to the height of this lectern than me, and he would have leant on it. That's how he preached, leaning on the pulpit, leaning on the lectern. talking of his love of God. And I remember him on one occasion speaking of his faith, and he misquoted a verse from Ecclesiastes. It's meant to say, Ecclesiastes 11:1, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days." Ted's version I loved. "Cast your bread upon the water and it will come back to you as a covenant bun." "Give and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put in your lap." Or, "Cast your bread upon the water and it will come back to you as a covenant bun." A wonderful misquote. Ted knew of the generosity of God in his life. We have a generous God who can never be outgiven. He invites us to give ourselves completely to him in faith and in service, for he has given himself completely to us in Jesus. We cannot outgive God. God will always outgive us. We are told, "Do not put the Lord your God to the test." But as we give to God, he will abundantly give to us. That doesn't always mean financial. But if we love others, we will receive love upon love poured out upon us. We will receive the strength that we need to face the mission Jesus calls us to be a part of. The Lord loves a generous giver, Paul wrote to the Corinthians. Much of our world shows examples of action and consequence. Commit a crime and be punished. Be unkind, lose a friend. Lie and cheat and lose the trust of many. But that's not God's way. Joseph had many reasons to dislike his brothers. Their actions resulted in him being sold into slavery, time of imprisonment, before he went on to become Pharaoh's right-hand man. When Joseph met his brothers, he saw beyond what had happened to him, and he focused upon their need as family for food. He now found himself in a position able to help his estranged family. He showed a generosity of spirit, setting aside his bad times, realizing it was part of God's plan and purpose for him to safeguard the future of his generation, of his family in the future generations. All of us probably know of families where there is estrangement, where there hasn't been reconciliation, and the tension that causes. It may be the same in your family. Joseph offered generous support to those who had abused him, who punished him for being a favourite. Can we show this generosity of spirit ourselves, looking beyond retribution to an outcome that benefits those who wronged us, as well as a benefit to ourselves? I have a quote somewhere which I cannot find at the moment, but it goes along something like, when you forgive someone, you are liberated from prison, not them. In the forgiving of another, you find liberation. In a clearing in the middle of the rainforest is a cage containing a bunch of bananas. An ape comes across the cage, reaches through the bar and takes hold of the bananas. However, he finds his fist would not fit back through the bars. Reluctant to let go of the bananas, he settled down on the ground next to the cage, keeping a tight hold of them. When a predator stumbles across the ape, he's helpless to protect himself, unless he is willing to let go of that which he is holding so tightly. Only in letting go is the ape free. Through letting go of the past, we can find freedom for tomorrow. Through letting go of the hurt and the pain of yesteryear, we can find the freedom and hope for tomorrow. Much of the pain and conflict in our world is through the holding on tightly to the past, rather than letting go and find liberty in the hearts and minds of others. The conflicts in Israel and Palestine, the tension between India and Pakistan, which means that while every other nation is playing cricket in Pakistan, India is saying, we're not going there. So you'll have to come and play us in Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they will not let go of the tension and the history that divided them to move on with a brighter future. We need to let go and become generous. Surrounded by a diverse company of people from a wide geographical area, Jesus begins teaching. He teaches and he heals. And while gathered around are a lot of people, he speaks directly to his disciples. Words that joy brought us. That challenge for generous living. I tell you, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other. Do not judge and you will be not judged. Jesus challenged the disciples to live in a different way. That challenge is still given to us today. Do not live as the world lives, but give as Christ gives. Generously. Good measure, pressed down and shaken together, running over. Offer the generosity of spirit that Christ has given to us. Offer the reconciliation that the world needs. Offer grace upon grace. Sometimes we find that others do it better than the church. Love can look like a cup of tea. In May 2013, a British soldier, Fusilier Lee Rigby, was murdered in London by Islamic terrorists. We probably remember it. It sparked a number of anti-Muslim protests, attacks across the country. The BBC and The Guardian reported an English Defence League protest outside a mosque. It was diffused when members of the mosque invited the protesters in for a chat over tea and biscuits, to join in a game of football. And in spending time together, the protesters and the Muslims found common ground in the belief that extremist violence is wrong. Through having a generous spirit and seeking to love perceived enemies, barriers were broken down, hatred ended. Are we generous to those who we live amongst? Are we willing to offer of ourselves? Are we willing to love as Christ has loved us? Remember this, Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. As we live out our faith, God encourages us to share the gifts, talents and resources we have generously, without judging others, to love as Christ has loved us. May we live our lives generously and enjoy a few more currant buns. Give and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, put in your lap. We are part of mission in Britain. It's not someone else's job, it's ours. We have in our midst here today Luke Denley, who seemed to be stalking me. He's our new circuit mission and new communities enabler or something like that. He is employed by the circuit not to do mission for us, but to do mission with us. He wants us to share in the mission that Christ has given to his church. We welcome Luke. We welcome each other, for together we are Christ's mission in Britain.